Coming up today, using a blocking tactic rarely seen in Korean politics, the main opposition party holds up a vote on the passage of a controversial anti-terrorism bill. North Korea slams South Korea and the United States for their countermeasures following Pyongyang's latest nuclear and missile provocations. The regime also threatens to retaliate against the allies' upcoming joint military drills. Plus, the top diplomats from the United States and China hold crunch talks on the level of sanctions the world should impose on North Korea for its nuclear test and long-range missile launch. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, February 24th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to our early morning edition of Arirang News. Our top story this morning, Korea's main opposition party has prevented the passage of long-pending anti-terrorism legislation using a delay tactic rarely seen in Korean parliament. Minju Party of Korea Representative Kim Kwan-jin spoke out against the bill for hours and deep into the night on Tuesday. The bill, which has been stalled for more than a decade, had been taken to the floor for a full vote by National Assembly Speaker Jung Hwa. It marks the first time a Korean-style filibuster rule has been put into practice since its adoption in 2012. This rule allows a lawmaker to give speeches that go on and on in order to delay a bill. The main opposition party is concerned that, if passed, the National Intelligence Service, the spy agency, could use its newfound powers to surveil ordinary citizens. President Park Geun-hye has repeatedly called on lawmakers to pass the bill to better protect the nation at a time of growing threats from North Korea and international terrorism. The Minju Party says its lawmakers will take turns delivering marathon speeches, so the filibuster continues at least to Friday. Now, after months of taxing negotiations, Korea's main rival parties have finalised a new-look electoral map just in time for a general election in mid-April. The map will be put for a vote by the end of this week. Oh Si-young reports.
Korea's main rival parties reached an agreement on a new electoral map, with just 50 days left before the general elections in April.
Despite our differences, we came to an agreement because the general election needs to move forward without any more setbacks.
This morning, Saenuri Party leader Kim Moo-sung, the National Assembly Speaker, and I held consultations and agreed on changes to the election law revision bill.
The redistricting plan will leave the total number of assembly seats at 300, with 253 seats allocated for district representatives. This reduces the number of seats designated for proportional representatives to 47. By district, Gyeonggi-do province saw the highest increase of seats in parliament, up 8 from last year. Meanwhile, Gangwon-do, Jeollabuk-do and Jeollanam-do provinces all lost a seat. Gyeongsangbuk-do province lost 2. The previous electoral map was scrapped at the end of last year to be redrawn to reflect population changes.
Adjusting the seats this time around balances out disproportionate representation. Although late, it's a positive move because it means the election system is more democratic.
Bipartisan clashes over changes to the proportional representation system, as well as other key pending bills, has stalled work on revising the electoral map for months. As lawmakers missed several deadlines, many, including candidates, feared the upcoming election would be postponed. A final version of the new electoral map has been submitted to the National Election Commission for review.
Now the task is making sure that electoral boundaries are fairly drawn for the benefit of the voters, not for partisan interests.
The bill will be put to a vote at a plenary session on Friday. Oh Si-young, Arirang News.
Job creation and economic revitalization. Those are the two goals President Park Geun-hye wants government officials to keep in mind when working on national policies. Heading into the final days of her third year in office, the president highlighted the need for officials to pull in the same direction. Song Ji-sun with the details.
Thursday marks President Park Geun-hye's third-year anniversary at the top office. Looking to the year ahead, 2016 is the finish line for her 3-year economic innovation plan and 4 major reforms in the finance, labor, education, and public sectors. At a seminar on the government's key reform tasks, she called on public officials to think about job creation and economic revitalization, the 2 goals that need to be kept in mind when reviewing regulations or drafting new policies.
이게 일자리를 만드는데 도움이 되냐 안 되냐, 이게 투자에 도움이 되냐 안 되냐. 왜냐하면 투자가 돼야 일자리가 생기니까 뭐든지 그거를 먼저 생각하고.
While acknowledging the current period of low growth, the president pointed out that the country is entering an era of new, rising sectors, stressing the need for timely deregulation to support new growth engines. To that end, the national chain of 17 innovation centers will play their part. They have already attracted over $100 million in investment, while helping nearly 600 startups turn their ideas into businesses. President Park urged government officials to put all efforts into nurturing this change and make history. She said they were at a deciding moment that would determine whether Korea can take another leap or sink. Stressing that the role of a government changes with time, President Park suggested that the government should no longer be a regulatory authority, but rather a pillar of support for new growth engines and industries. 송지선, Arirang News.
Now, North Korea is demanding South Korea and the United States to stop threatening it for its recent nuclear and missile tests. Pyongyang also denounced the 2 countries' upcoming annual joint military exercises and warned of retaliation. It said South Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade would be targeted. Kwon So-ah reports.
North Korea has denounced actions that try to punish the regime for its recent nuclear test and missile launch, which Pyongyang claims was a successful hydrogen bomb test and launch of a satellite. In a statement carried by its state media late Tuesday, the Supreme Command of the North Korean People's Army warned of a preemptive attack on anyone who provokes the regime even a little, saying in its own words, it's ready to immediately and mercilessly punish without slightest leniency, tolerance, and patience. It also condemned the annual Seoul-Washington joint military drills, the Key Resolve and Foal Eagle, set to take place early March. This year's exercises will be the largest of their kind in the wake of latest provocations by Pyongyang. The statement went on to say its first target was South Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade, while the U.S. Asia-Pacific troops and mainland U.S. were secondary targets. The statement also denounced the involvement of South Korea and the U.S. in the adoption of a new UN Security Council resolution against the regime. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi are holding a press conference as we speak, following crunch talks in Washington. John Kerry has just said that the 2 sides have agreed to work to bring about a rapid response by the UN Security Council in sanctions against North Korea for its recent string of violations. In particular, Kerry said the countries, the US and China, that is, are in complete agreement that the North's actions merit an appropriate and strong action by the United Nations. Also, the 2 sides have agreed to make deep cooperation to bring North Korea back to the 6-party talks, the purpose of which is the denuclearization of North Korea. Also due to come up will be the countries are at odds over the sovereignty issues surrounding the South China Sea. That is a hot-button issue between the 2 sides. Also, talks between Seoul and Washington over the deployment of a powerful missile defense system known as THAAD to the Korean Peninsula. That is likely to come up as well because Beijing is deeply opposed to it as well. We will bring you all the details during our next newscast at noon Korea time. Now, a renowned North Korea expert says South Korea's suspension of operations at the joint industrial park in Kaesong could force North Korea to reform due to the slow-motion collapse of the country's economy. William Brown of Georgetown University made the remarks in a contribution to the US-based North Korea analysis website 38 North. He says economic pressures are probably the only factors that will convince Kim Jong-un to set aside his nuclear ambitions. Brown noted how shrinking South Korean and Western aid will force North Korea to allow private activities that generate foreign exchange earnings. He said a new deal in which Kaesong is reopened with direct pay to workers and a reasonable tax cut for the state would signal real economic reform and should be welcomed by all sides. President Park Geun-hye enters her 4th year in office on Thursday. To mark the occasion, we are broadcasting a series of reports this week about her successes and failures and look at what might be in store going forward. Third in our series of 5 reports is the President's handling of security and defence-related matters. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Since the start of her term in office, President Park has had to handle a continuous stream of threats from North Korea. The most recent being Pyongyang's 4th nuclear test, its firing of a long-range missile, and the planting of landmines in the demilitarized zone that badly injured 2 South Korean soldiers. Some analysts say the president's handling of these tense incidents has left a strong impression.
The Park administration has always responded sternly to North Korea's provocations, diffusing further escalation, even getting close to an apology from the North for last August's mine. But the real test is how her administration will enhance its defense structure for the remainder of her term to better counter the regime's threats, including its nuclear capabilities.
Pyongyang has been enhancing its ballistic missile and nuclear capabilities. In order to combat this growing threat, Seoul decided to address the possibility of deploying the U.S. Terminal High Altitude Area Defense to the peninsula. Prior to the regime's missile testing early this month, the Korean government had been adhering to a so-called no principle on the issue, as in no request, no consultation, no decision.
The government has since backed off its 3-no policy and has instead shifted its focus to put national interest at the forefront. The sudden change garnered controversy. The government should have made it clear from the start that the deployment of THAAD would be decided upon based on national interest.
With an unpredictable neighbor looming just north of the border, there are many issues and tasks President Park needs to address during the remainder of her time in office.
We need to be able to promptly respond to any forms of provocation from the North and adapt our strategy, equipment, and systems. Our military needs to strongly back up the government's North Korea policy and try to change the regime's views while strongly countering any threats.
Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, Samsung's Galaxy S6 Edge smartphone has grabbed the top award at the Mobile World Congress 2016 in Barcelona. In addition, the Korean company's Gear S2 smartwatch received top honors for the best connected consumer electronic device in the best mobile handsets and devices category. Receiving the awards, Samsung's mobile communications president, Go Dong-jin, said the company remains committed to providing devices inspired by consumers and is always focused on progress and innovation. And a number of tech startups are under the spotlight at this year's Mobile World Congress in Barcelona for a look at some of the smartest new products from the smaller firms at the expo. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
This year's Mobile World Congress is not only an invitation for global tech giants to step up, but it's also a great business opportunities for startups and their creative inventions. Korean startup Dot has unveiled the world's first Braille smartwatch for the visually impaired. The face of the device is covered in 30 Braille dots. They can be used to help the user type and send messages. A special module set meant the watch could be shrunk to a wearable size. It also ensured the device could come with an affordable price tag of $300. Dot says it plans to sell its products starting next year in G20 countries and hopes to develop the world's first Braille pad in the near future.
We worked with a lot of visually impaired people to maximize their sense of touch using Braille. In the process, we learned that one of their biggest worries was that they could break it easily since they are not used to handling sophisticated devices on their own. So we addressed their concerns by fitting the device with the strongest aluminum material we could find.
This smartphone case by Korean startup 24/7 is equipped with a stun gun for emergency protection. With the flip of a switch located on the back of the phone, the case can emit up to 100,000 volts of electricity and notify police in under 2 seconds. 24/7 says the device is easy and safe to use.
This one's really safe because unless you put your finger in it, safety finger, it's not going to be activated. And we also have the safety button. You're going to have to push it up to activate it. So actually you're going to have to put your fingertip, and then after that you're going to have to push it up to activate the stun gun. So it's pretty safe when you're on the phone.
24/7 thinks participating in the MWC will help them realize their goal of finding a business partner so it can launch products in other countries, in particular in the US and Europe. The startup says it wants to launch its app called Vault around May and the phone case sometime during the second half of this year. Kim Jian, Arirang News, Barcelona.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to our newscast. We greatly appreciate it, and we do hope to see you throughout the day, because we are back at 12 noon, as I just mentioned, for our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.